Hi guys, it's Julie. If you didn't watch my previous video, I am a labor and delivery nurse as well as a new mom to a 3-month-old daughter, Elena. And I made a video previous to this about being diagnosed with cholestasis and preeclampsia during my first pregnancy and only pregnancy, and just kind of discussed how that transpired. So I'm making another video now to kind of follow up with that and also tell a little bit more of my story as well as how it was being induced at 36 weeks. So I found it challenging despite my knowledge of the diagnoses, being a nurse that works in labor and delivery with patients with these complications every day. Maybe not necessarily cholestasis every day because cholestasis is quite rare. And the combination of the two is also very rare. But I struggled quite a bit, especially with my diagnosis of preeclampsia. I was in denial when I was first diagnosed, and then I felt very betrayed by my body. I felt disappointed in myself. I felt very alone and isolated as a result of that diagnosis and being put off of work because of that diagnosis. I found it challenging, and I wish that I would have been able to connect with somebody or see that someone else had gone through the same thing, because I felt very alone and just, like I said, betrayed, that my body had betrayed me. I was supposed to have this normal, healthy first pregnancy like all of the people I knew had had. I was 28 years old when I got pregnant, 29 when I delivered. I thought, I was a fairly healthy person, and then I go through my pregnancy and I get a small bowel obstruction at 28 weeks. I get hospitalized for that. Then I get preeclampsia, and then I get cholestasis. I was just like, what the heck is going on? Why is this happening to me? I was just very, I don't know, just disappointed. I thought that I was going to have this beautiful pregnancy like my mom had, like other family members I've known have had, and it just didn't go that way for me. And that's just how it is sometimes. And so I just want anyone else out there that's going through something like this to know that you are not alone, and it is not your fault. This is just something that happens, and it's unfortunate, and that it's just one of those things that sometimes you have to go through to meet your baby. So back to my story. Being induced at 36 weeks. I knew I was going to be induced at 37 weeks because of the preeclampsia. The 36-week thing was bumped up because I got diagnosed with cholestasis, and my doctor was very concerned about the well-being of my baby. With that diagnosis, I did start to notice less fetal movement as after that diagnosis, and that is one of the really big warning signs that something could be happening to your baby. So he wanted to bump that date up, and so I complied and scheduled the induction. I think I was 36 weeks and 3 days when I was induced, and I had been prepping a little bit early for being induced, trying to do things at home, old wives' tales. Even though I was a labor and delivery nurse at the time, I still tried the old wives' tales to try and prep myself for labor and make my cervix as favorable as possible for being induced, because I knew the chances of complications and the incidence for a failed induction at 36 weeks with being a first-time mom was quite high. So when you're that early, your cervix is not favorable unless you're a very lucky person, but mine was closed and thick and high, which is not ready for labor. And a lot of times just your body isn't ready. So I tried things a little earlier. My doctor was okay with it. That's something you do need to check. But I started drinking red raspberry leaf tea. Did it do anything? I am not sure. But I can tell you my story and you can deduce what you want from it. So I was taking the red raspberry leaf tea a couple times a day. I ordered I think it was pink stork tea off of Amazon. So I was drinking that, and that is supposed to help prepare your uterus for contractions. Some people get contractions from drinking the tea. Not any like labor contractions, but just like Braxton Hicks, just some tightening. It's supposed to help condition your uterus for labor and make it more efficient, like kind of like a workout to prime that muscle. I also was eating dates. 5 dates a day was what I read was the most ideal, like 5 to 6 dates a day. So I was making these, I don't remember what they called them, like induction smoothies or cervical ripening smoothie would probably be the better word for it, because I didn't always feel like just eating the dates straight up, which, I mean, dates don't really taste that bad. And then I was also eating pineapple. The smoothies I was making had dates, banana, I think cinnamon and milk, and pineapple. That sounds really gross, but it was actually good. I found the recipe on Pinterest. Let me know if you want me to look it up. But anyways, I was drinking those daily. And I think that was it that I tried. Yeah, I think that was it. So, I went into my induction and we knew that I was probably not going to be dilated. Doctor checked me when I was admitted to the unit. And I was closed and thick and high still because that's what I was when I was in on the previous Friday, and this is only a couple days later. I knew not much had changed. And I was then, the plan was for me to get Cervidil. Now, Cervidil, almost every induction method is hormonal. Cervidil is no different. It is a hormonal cervical ripener, and what it is a medication that comes in a little, like, bar about yay big, and it is basically looks like if you've ever used a bar of soap down to the very last sliver, it looks like that sliver of soap. And they have it basically in this like mesh little like string that like kind of like wraps around it, and then there's like a string to it, kind of like a tampon. And what the doctor or nurse does, in my case, my doctor wanted to place it because he wanted to make sure it really got on the right spot. They insert it into the vagina up onto the cervix and push it all the way up there onto the cervix so that it can sit there and melt on the cervix for 12 hours is what's recommended. And during that time, it's supposed to soften the cervix, hopefully bring it forward if it's posterior, and thin it out. Hopefully gain some kind of dilation. So they placed mine at around 8 o'clock in the morning, I believe. And I had prepared for basically a long induction because I knew, first time mom, my body's not ready, my cervix isn't dilated. This is going to take a couple days because a lot of times it does. I brought adult coloring books, books to read. I was watching TV. My husband was there with me, trying to keep me occupied. Things to just distract me because you're literally just sitting there waiting. And it was, for the most part, a pretty pleasant day. Some people get contractions from Cervidil. Some people don't. A lot of people just get cramping. For me, it was mostly cramping throughout the day. My doctor was kind enough to let me eat during the cervical ripening, which they're kind of leaning a little bit more towards if you're really not even in labor yet. So I was very lucky. I was able to eat almost my entire labor. I wasn't necessarily in labor yet at this point. So I spent several hours just kind of, I was having contractions, but they weren't super strong. It was mostly like crampy. And as the afternoon progressed, I definitely felt a strengthening in the contractions and noticed the regularity was really increasing. They probably started out around 7 minutes apart, and as the afternoon progressed, they were becoming like 5 minutes and then 3 minutes, and I was starting to get a little cranky, um, or it's kind of hard to describe. But my mom had come to visit to see how I was doing. She worked on a unit below where I was, and she's like, I could tell there was a change in you when I came in like after work, I think is when she came, like around 5, and I was about to eat supper, and definitely was feeling a lot more uncomfortable, and I was questioning whether I should even eat because I was starting to get to the point where it was getting pretty uncomfortable, just the contractions, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be nauseous from them. But I also knew, like, the pain level for me, it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't like a pain that I felt like you need to do something about this. It was just like, this isn't fun. Okay, is this over yet? Okay, is this contraction over with? Because it's starting to get like irritating. Not necessarily like, oh my gosh, help me, but I'm not really smiling through these contractions anymore. So at 8:30, I believe, is when I had my cervidil removed, and glory hallelujah, I was a centimeter dilated. I could not believe it. I did not think that was going to happen. My expectations were very low of this experience because I had seen many patients go through it, and a lot of times it didn't happen for them. So with the first round, sometimes you have to do multiple rounds of cervidil in order to get something to happen or a noticeable change. So they removed the cervidil. My nurse, my wonderful nurse slash coworker, removed it, and she called the doctor and asked him what he wanted to do next, and he said it worked so well by making me dilate a whole centimeter, which I know does not sound like much, but that is a big deal to get past that first centimeter. Getting open and having that opening is a huge deal when you are being induced. So he thought it worked so well that he wanted to repeat the dose and do cervidil overnight again. And I was really sick of my room at that point, so I asked my nurse if it was okay if my husband and I went for a little walk before we had the second dose placed. So she said that's fine, take like a half hour or whatever, walk around. And then too, I wanted to see, I was having contractions, so I wanted to see like if I could kind of, move things along, and just get a change of scenery because I knew I was going to be stuck in bed all night with the cervidil. So we got up, and I got my little extra gown on. We started down the hallway, and the way our unit works is like there's a labor and delivery unit, and then through a set of double doors is a postpartum unit that also has antepartum, which is basically like for high-risk pregnancy patients that have to be hospitalized during their pregnancy. So I'm walking down the hallway. I barely even just got through the doors of going into the postpartum and antepartum unit, and we're walking down the hallway. It's all dark, because it's nighttime and patients are kind of settled in for the night, and we're walking down the first hallway and looking out the windows and everything and just kind of enjoying our time, but at the same time I'm having contractions, so I'm kind of pausing and breathing through those contractions as they're coming. And we start to go to turn down one of the next hallways, and I felt a little trickle. And it wasn't much, so I was like, oh shoot, like I peed on myself a little. I must have needed to use the bathroom. And being an employee at this hospital, I told my husband, because we were walking by empty rooms, I said, run into that room real quick and grab me a little washcloth. I just tinkled on myself. And he was like, okay. So he ran and got me a washcloth, and I was like, haha, okay. Took a couple steps more as I'm holding the washcloth, which I totally regret not putting on the mesh underwear and pad. I didn't even think of it because there's no way anything's gonna happen. Took a couple more steps, had a contraction, and there was a gush. So my water broke in the hallway. So cliche, but it did. And I told my husband, I was like, okay, run into that room and grab me a big towel. And he grabbed a towel, shoved it between my legs, and then I saw a wheelchair was sitting at the end of the hallway. I said, okay, honey, run to the end of the hallway, grab me that wheelchair, and wheel me back to the room. So that's what he did. He booked it down the hallway, grabbed the wheelchair, wheeled me right over to the nurse's station, said, Julie's water broke at 9 o'clock p.m. And that's when things really took off for me. So this is like 13 hours into the process, and you can't even really say that I was truly in labor for that time, because that's not how it works. That's not what the definition of labor is. Labor is like when you actually kick in and you're making change actively. So I would consider my start of labor would be when my water broke. True labor, not early labor. So he brought me back to the room, and they let me kind of get cleaned up, and then I went back on the monitor to see how baby was doing. And everything was looking great, but man, oh man, and I've always known this to be true, but I never experienced it myself. When your water breaks, the pain gets way more intense. So, I was getting pretty uncomfortable. I was like, okay, we'll see how we do. We see how we do. I knew what my options were for pain control. I was totally open to the experience and just seeing how things went and seeing what I needed. And I wasn't closing myself off to any options, but I was also going to see if I can do this without an epidural. I will do it, but we'll just see. So I tried moving around in the room. I tried kind of doing the birthing ball, kind of just swaying, that kind of thing, in order to help me with the pain of the contractions, and it just was getting extremely intense. She had checked me right after I came back after my water broke, and I was like 1.5 centimeters, so not much had changed, but I could tell things had definitely kicked up a notch. So she said, this is a good time, maybe you want to take some medication for the pain. So I took the IV medication, Stadol, which works for some people, other people it doesn't. Some people are like, this stuff is amazing. Other people are like, it didn't help me at all. It just depends on the person. I took it, and I didn't dislike it, but I didn't feel that it helped me significantly. And everyone's pain is completely different in labor, and that is so true. Every person's experience is so different that it's really hard to generalize these types of things, because I know patients who go without an epidural who literally have the most amazing control and tell me that their pain wasn't really that bad. And then I have people like myself where I was a centimeter dilated, and I felt a lot of pain, and I was okay, but I wasn't coping. And so I opted to get the pain medication because I was like, maybe it'll help me relax because I was tensing up a lot with the contractions. And that's kind of counterproductive for progressing your labor. So I took the medication and it definitely made me feel super drunk. Um, Being pregnant, I hadn't had a lick of alcohol for months and months and months. And I would equate the feeling to being very drunk. You definitely feel like you're on drugs, which you are. Um, and basically, it's a sedative. So I felt very sedated, like tired, and like I couldn't open my eyes. But, and I felt very heavy. Like I was kind of like sedated, but at the same time, I was awake and I was still feeling the pain. I would say if my pain was like an 8 at the time that I got the medication, it maybe went down to like a 7 or a 6, maybe. And I just felt like, okay, I have the pain still, but now I can't move around or do anything about it. So that technically takes effect for like 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on the dosage. And I was struggling during that 2 hours. I was having a hard time. I was not coping very well. I initially was like, okay, but like after maybe 30 minutes or so, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really uncomfortable. This is bad and I can't do anything. So my husband was basically in the throes of it with me, like rubbing my back, doing counter pressure, like massaging me. We brought some massage balls. Um, Trying to help me because I was literally just so uncomfortable. I was on my hands and knees in the bed. I was trying everything and anything, side laying, like, on my back, sitting, laying, just anything and everything, and nothing was really helping me. So, and my nurse noticed a change in me. She said, okay, it's been 2 hours, like, let's see how it is, like, what we can do next. So she checked me and I think it was 3 to 4 centimeters. So I made pretty quick progress. It had been 2 hours, so I progressed about 2 to 3 centimeters in 2 hours, which is good. That's considered active labor if you're changing at least a centimeter an hour. And I said, like, I need the epidural. I want the epidural. Give it to me. Every hospital is different on their policy and when you can get it. But ours is basically like, if you're in active labor, you can get your epidural. Two, when you're being induced, it's different because it can be a little bit more intense. And they know that no matter what, like, you're going to have this baby. It's not like, oh, you showed up in triage and you're 3 to 4 centimeters. But if your water's not broke and you're not having regular contractions, you might not stay. So my water was broke. I was contracting up a storm every like 2 minutes at this point. I wasn't on any medication. This was just purely from my water breaking and the Cervidil that wasn't even in me anymore. And I was in active labor and really going through it. So they were totally willing to do the epidural because they knew I was on a roll. And if my contractions were going to die down, they could give me Pitocin through the IV to speed things up. So I was basically begging for the epidural. This is at like 11 p.m. I think. And I was like, please, 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 like, just give it to me. I need the epidural. I was moaning. I did not want to be that patient that was loud, that was, not coping, but that was me. It just was what happened for me. And my nurse was so understanding. She's like, no, you are totally fine. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I just can't. I just have to moan. Like, I have to let it out somehow. Like, I can't just, like, hold it in. So, luckily, my anesthesiologist who did my epidural was fantastic. He did it super quick. I think he had that epidural in less than 5 minutes, which some of our anesthesiologists are that fast. And I was feeling relief probably within like 5 to 10 minutes. typically epidurals, you will feel the full effect within 30 minutes, but I think he dosed me up a little extra off the bat just to kind of give me that coverage because he could tell I was not doing well. Maybe by the fact that I was like begging. I don't know. Anyway, so once I got the epidural and like kind of got settled after everything, I think it was around midnight. And I was like completely pain-free. It was absolutely fabulous. I was still kicking out contractions like crazy. Baby was doing great. So my nurse was like, okay, if you want to like lay on your side for a little bit and take a nap, you can go ahead and do that. So we just like threw a pillow between my legs, and I literally fell asleep because I hadn't slept since the night before, and honestly I didn't sleep hardly before the night before my induction because I was nervous. So we took like a good hour nap maybe, and I woke up feeling pressure. Now, if you've ever had an epidural before or been educated on epidurals, they cover pain, but they do not cover pressure. It's a different type of receptor in your body, and that's not covered. So, but it's actually a good thing because it's good because it helps you know when your baby's gonna come, and it helps you push. If you don't feel that pressure, then you can't really direct your pushing to the right spot. And I knew that feeling pressure meant it could be possible that baby is ready to come. Now, in my mind though, I'm thinking, no, it's only been an hour, and I was like 3 to 4 centimeters before when she checked me before I got my epidural. So I called in my nurse and I said, hey, I'm feeling pressure. Oh, I forgot to mention, before this, so they put in a catheter after the epidural, so like it had been like maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes after the epidural had set in. She put in a catheter. That's a sterile process, so a lot of times the nurses will check your dilation, and I think I was 6 centimeters at that point. So, yeah, I was moving quickly. And so basically like an hour later, I called her in because of the pressure, and I was complete. And she told me not to push because the baby was like right there, is what she said. So I was one of those people that when I got an epidural, everything relaxed and I just dilated like super quickly. That was like 4 centimeters in an hour. So yeah, went really quickly. So she called the doctor in because my doctor was coming in special for my delivery. Obviously have a close working relationship with him and also being his patient. So he drove in, so we were basically just hanging out there like waiting to start pushing until he got there because she felt that the baby was low enough to where she did not feel comfortable pushing without him in the hospital. We did have another doctor there in the hospital that I worked at and delivered at, has an in-house obstetrician 24/7. They never leave. So it's not like someone wouldn't have been there to deliver my baby, but he wanted to deliver my baby. So when he got there, we started pushing, which was interesting to finally get to do that. And after about, I think that was around 2:15, we started pushing. And so I pushed for about 45 minutes and delivered at 3:01 a.m. So, yeah, it went really well. Like, the pushing went really well. I didn't feel a whole lot, but you still do feel some sensation. And, yeah, everything went perfect. She delivered. There were no complications with the delivery aside from just me tearing. I did get a 2nd-degree tear, but they were able to put her straight to my chest, do delayed cord clamping, skin to skin. Everything looked perfect with her. She was perfectly healthy, and that was such a relief. And all I can say is from the time that it started, my labor started, which I would consider 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. That was about 6 hour labor, which is pretty quick. Um, I was so grateful and so surprised at how well the induction went. I had so many reservations. I was really nervous that things weren't going to go as planned, that I was going to have yet another difficult experience with my pregnancy. And it really did go well. And I had always heard the doctors talk about how when you have preeclampsia, a lot of times your body is just ready. It's ready to deliver because basically preeclampsia is like a state of kind of like toxicity to your pregnancy. Like the pregnancy is becoming toxic to your body. It's causing your body to have all this stress and the stress reaction that is not good for you. And so your body really, the only cure for preeclampsia is delivery. And so your body kind of wants that. And a lot of times that can help women have an easier labor because of that. Because your body's like, okay, like this needs to stop. Like this isn't healthy for us anymore. This baby needs to come out. So that could be potentially one of the reasons why my delivery went well. And then it went very quick. It could also be attributed to genetics. My mom always had fairly quick labors um, as well. And it also, and I don't know if any of it's true, but maybe some of the old wives' tales worked. I don't know. You can leave that to your own discretion. It doesn't hurt to try the stuff that I did. So, did it work? Yes, no, I don't know. But all I can say is that my delivery went really well and it did not take that long. And the induction was a fairly pleasant process for me. The only medication I received was Cervidil, and then that was it. Once my water was broke, it was game over. It was time to have a baby. So, um, things moved very quickly. And I'm so grateful for everyone who helped take care of me, and it just made the process so much better. My husband for sticking by my side. As a labor and delivery nurse, I still took a birthing class, and I highly recommend it for anyone, especially if you know you're being induced, because it really helps you know what is to come and educates you as a patient to really know a lot more about what to expect and make you more comfortable about what the experience is going to be. It really helped me knowing that my husband understood the process, knew what to expect, and just was able to really be there for me and not have all these questions about what was going on. One thing I have learned in my work is that hardly anyone takes birthing classes anymore. Hardly anyone has a birth plan. And that's okay, you don't have to have a plan, but it really helps. And a lot of hospitals have classes for free. It really helps you prepare and just takes a level of anxiety away from you by doing that. It makes you feel more prepared and educated on what's going on. And we really enjoyed it. So that's a recommendation I have. And I hope that maybe this helps somebody feel a little bit more comfortable if you are in similar shoes than what I was in, where you have preeclampsia and maybe you're going to be induced, or maybe even cholestasis. Cholestasis is like very rare, but it happens, and it is. I can be here to say that it is possible to have a positive induction at 36 weeks. And with all these complications that you have in pregnancy, and I was able to have a vaginal delivery. I didn't have to have a C-section, which I'm so grateful for. So hopefully this is helpful. I'll probably post another video maybe talking about some of the ups and downs of having a baby at 36 weeks, kind of what that entailed, and some of the interesting nuances to having a baby that isn't quite full term. She is healthy, but there was some just different things that I wasn't expecting as a new mom to go through as a result of her being a little bit early. So I'll probably do another video on that, but I hope this was helpful. Feel free to comment below if you have any questions or want to share your story, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.